Hello, I'm Chuck Phillip, and welcome to a Close Encounters of the Third Kind Southern story. You know, I've seen this house many years, or decades. In fact, my mother-in-law used to live pretty close to this house out there in Fairhope, back in the early 80s, and she probably moved there in the 70s. But back then, Highway 27, what everybody knows now is 181, it was really out in the middle of nowhere, and it was completely dark. And if you had a really good clear night, you could steer up to the stars and you could really see pretty well. Of course, we've got all the humidity in the air most of the time down here, but if it was a cold night, you could really see pretty much everything in the heavens. And I've tried to research and find out why they chose this house here, but I'm assuming that that's why they did, because there was no light pollution. It was really out in the middle of nowhere back in 1977. They probably started the filming of this in 76. And I remember going by this house hundreds of times and always thought it was kind of cool. And then I remember them filming this there too back in the 70s. I just kind of sort of forgot all about it until I went down 181 and I started seeing, the widening the road all the way to Fairhope. I'm assuming they'll finish that sometime in the future. So I figured I would get out and take a look at this house. It was for sale, and I kind of sort of did my little impromptu home inspection on it too while I was there. And then I really got fascinated with the whole movie at that point. And I'd never seen the movie. And I said, you know what, I probably ought to go watch this movie. And of course, some people had told me that they really didn't dig it too much, but I think it was a pretty cool movie. I do. If you haven't watched it, I recommend you go watch the movie. There's some, what I thought was aggravating was the French talking in that. I thought that should have been cut out because I think it extended the movie too long and it didn't need to be in there. But I'm no Siskel and Ebert, so I've never been a big movie buff. But I walked around this thing and pretty much got captivated by the whole house. And I've inspected others like this in the past. And this has a crawl space underneath it. And it looks like it's got the air conditioning system underneath it as well. In the course of doing my research, I saw a blog where one person posted that the house was moved there. And then I saw another blog on the same comment section where this lady here claims that her granddad lived there and grew up in this house. So I'm not too sure what to make of that. So it appears to me like this house was built there on site, but it's possible it could be moved because that was pretty much done more often than you would think it would have been done back in the 60s and 70s. They could actually put a truck up underneath the house and just move it. And in fact, Steve Bauer, who plays with the band The Items, I played with him back in the 70s with 44 Magnum. I got one of his reels, 8mm reels, and converted it for him. And this is a video of them moving the house back in 1964 from Daphne, pretty much where the Papa John's gas station is right there. It was located there, and they moved it out to Bell Forest, I believe. And so it's possible that these houses can be moved around. So I just let people, in the comments section, straighten that out, which way this went. Okay, so I'm going to put up some comparables here. These are screenshots from the movie versus some shots that I took while I was there, so you can kind of sort of get an idea of how this was back then and the way it is today. And also, too, you can look out from the front porch of this, it's where the new Publix is going in. This movie was shot, that's all there was around this. There's nothing but fields and, of course, the 27 road that intersects right here at 104. And so I figured I'd go ahead and swing on through here and just check this thing out at night. Yeah, I'm not really a superstitious person, but I'd already watched the movie at this point, and it was real peaceful. There really wasn't a whole lot of traffic going by when I was there, and it kind of gave me a little bit of a flashback of what it was like there in the 70s, because that's how it was. There's very little traffic. And I kept looking up at the sky, and I kept thinking about the movie, and I kept wondering, maybe since a movie was done here, maybe the aliens out there kind of sort of knew this, and maybe I get lucky and have a close encounter myself. But that didn't happen. I even thought about taking my bass out of the car and actually playing the theme to it. Maybe that would spur them on. But I got to thinking also too about what led Spielberg to make this movie. And I remember back in the early 70s, it was pretty much around 73. Of course, some of these reports could have come out before then. But that seemed to be the height of the UFO phenomenon. It even got me out looking up in the air all the time, looking for UFOs. And there was an incident in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where two shipyard workers claimed they had a close encounter with these aliens, and they were even abducted and taken into the spacecraft. And so we'll go ahead and play a little clip about that right here so you can see it.
Unidentified flying objects, or UFO sightings, reached a record number that year, being called in from Key West to Seattle. All sightings were listened to, but most were disregarded as a hoax or an explainable happening. But two Pascagoula shipyard workers in October of that year managed to grab and hold on to the nation's attention in an incident that would come to be known as the Pascagoula UFO incident.
There seemed to be quite a few people making these encounters back then. But when they interviewed the guys from Pascagoula, they really believed that they had some sort of an experience. They did not think that they were lying about what they saw. Now, I've never seen aliens before. I'm not saying they don't exist. I remember asking my granddad at the time if he'd ever seen a flying saucer. And he goes, "Chick, let me tell you one damn thing. The only flying saucer I've ever seen was one my mama threw at me across the damn kitchen floor." I said, well, I certainly don't want to see that kind of flying saucer, that's for sure. So that was the only saucer he saw. And so I kind of sort of think that that's where the theme came from, was I think Spielberg had saw these instances play out on television and the news, and he became fascinated by it. And I really believe that's why the aliens were designed, to a large degree by what they described they encountered, and of course the flying saucer. This wasn't the only location where they filmed this movie. They filmed part of it at the L&N rail station in Bay Minette, and that's what saved that from being destructive, from what I understand. They were going to tear that building down, and I think the actual movie kept that from happening, so I believe it's still standing to this day. And also there were some scenes filmed on Carlisle Drive, and I think the majority of the movie was filmed there. That and the hangar at Brookley Field. They needed a large hangar to set up these massive scenes. And so, they also had the railroad crossing at Paget Switch Road. When I was a conductor for CSX, I used to go across this thing all the time, almost every day. And then there were some deleted scenes that were filmed on the causeway at the old Holiday Inn, which is no longer there. And before it was a Holiday Inn, it was a Thunderbird Inn, and I remember both those hotels very well. And so I kind of wondered why, those scenes got left out of the movie. You can actually see them. There's a director's cut that shows those deleted scenes. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this one from the deleted scene. Here, this is the Holiday Inn down on the causeway.
Let me tell him.
No. I want to tell him, all right? All right?
David, let me tell him. I always tell him.
What are you going to say to him? You don't speak French.
Salut.
But it's not enough.
Comment ça va?
Now, for some reason, I thought that this was being filmed at the Woody's Hotel, which was not too far from this. But that might have been another movie I'm thinking about. It might have been Close Encounters of the Wrong Kind. Who knows? I know there's been some. I wouldn't be surprised if they've had some wrong encounters there. But this is also a flashback to the 70s for me as well. I mean, a lot of kids had UFO lunch boxes. We were in the space age. I mean, we still had the Apollo missions going at the time. And so that was really a heightened era of space. I mean, everybody was interested in it. And that's why you had a lot of the retro designs back in the 50s and 60s and even all through the 70s. But, this wasn't the only movie that was filmed here. If you watch this to the end, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. You can actually look at the list of the movies that were filmed here. And that's not a complete list, by the way. I bought a bunch of photographs from this one collection. I can't even remember where I got them. And I had all these old photographs, and I didn't know what they went to or what they were. And finally, I showed them to a guy, and he says, those are the models that were used for the making of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In fact, one of these was actually turned into a trailer, and somebody may still be living in it. Now, the vast majority of the filming took place in Brooklyn Field in that hangar, but they also did quite a bit of filming at this house on Carlisle Drive. And Spielberg was a pretty cool cat. He involved the entire neighborhood in the project, including the neighbor next door. In fact, he went as far as cutting a window into the side of that house so they could see them shoot this movie next door. And he kind of turned it into a Mrs. Kravitz, for those that remember the Bewitched show, The Nosy Neighbor. And so she was included in this movie, and they would have these tremendous block parties and have all the neighbors out there for it, have barbecues, all kinds of drinks, and they'd also had this band there too. And I tried to zoom in to see who those cats were. So if any of you out there know who this band is, I'd like to find out. Steven Spielberg included a lot of the locals in this movie, and he also included a lot of the elementary school students in Mobile, mainly girls, because he felt like they could move more gracefully than boys, and I would agree with that. And I think a lot of these girls were either in dance or gymnastics, either or both. And so they made these costumes for them, and they played the role of the aliens in the movie. And here's some photographs of some of those girls at the party that they had there on the block. And also here's another photograph of one of those girls that's now grown with her mom. So, Stephen really did a great job of including the locals in this movie, and they were real proud to be a part of it as well. They probably didn't have any idea how successful this movie was going to be when they were doing this. But there's also a companion film, and I'm going to put the link to it down below because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going over what's already been done. On an interesting footnote, Spielberg always believed that if aliens was to communicate with Earth, they would do it through music. And so we had this ARP 2500 brought down to the hangar there at Brooklyn, and these were really rare back then. There's only about 100 of these made. I always thought it was a Moog they used. That was a sister to this and a little bit more common. In fact, Emerson, Lake and Palmer were pretty famous for that. But on another interesting footnote as well, back in 1977 when they launched Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, they put gold records on there, and I kind of wonder if they may have picked that up from Spielberg. And incidentally, they still have communication with both those aircraft. Steven Spielberg met his wife during the production of this film back in 1976. Her name was Amy Irving, and they stayed together all the way up to 1989. That's when they divorced, but they did have one son that was born in 1985. And so I guess he did have an encounter of the right kind himself making this film. And you just never know. Sometimes you go through life and find out that it was a close encounter of the wrong kind, and it might be her or maybe him or both. But I figured this would be a pretty interesting story to put out there since this was filmed here, and I might do a couple more of these because there's two other movies that I thought were pretty interesting that was filmed here. And so I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this trailer at the end. If you want to watch it, you can. You can also pause it if it goes too quick. And this is a list of all the movies that were filmed here, and that may not be a complete list. But I greatly want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. This was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. In fact, I trimmed a lot of it out. But, I felt like this needed to be in here to make it more of a complete story. And I greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel as well. And also share this video too, because I would like to find out who these people in the band are. And not only that, but I know there's a lot of people out there that were probably part of this movie, and they probably like to see this as well, so they can put in their 2 cents and add to the story. I'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.